Greetings and salutations, citizens of the capital and our districts, and welcome to the latest round recap for the 2026 horror games, where we're breaking down some of the best face-offs, the biggest upsets, and even some moderately lukewarm takes on what's next for our surviving tributes. My name is Kris. I'm your host and mentor for the Slasher District in this year's games. And this year, of course, we have with us the Monster Madness and Game Maker herself, Chel. Now, this second round absolutely sent shockwaves through the 4 districts. Citizens were asked to set aside the body counts and the blood and dig into something far more unsettling: the stories that made these tributes who they are today. Round 2 asked a question that horror has always asked us to consider. Were they born this way, or did the world make them this way? 32 tributes entered the arena and only 16 walked out. But Chel, what can you tell us about this round of play?
The 32 survivors from round 1 barely had time to wash the blood off their hands and rub their eyes before it was time again for them to fight. And the face-offs in this round made it incredibly hard and tragic, but also fascinating to watch as 32 entered the arena. But as you said, Kris, there was only room for 16 survivors.
I can't wait to see who one of the survivors were.
Yes, well, the biggest winner of the round goes to the alien queen, who, while facing off against the female from under the skin, managed to limit the female to only 2 votes.
And no, and again, you might think embarrassing, only 2 votes. But think about the mediocre men in the previous round who only scored 0 votes.
Absolutely, Dr. Morris is still the shame of District 1, and I think he will be for a long time. He did not play well, and when you're going up against someone like the Alien Queen, who made her presence known even last year in the games, even a slight score, a slight moving in the needle, is quite the accomplishment. So while we will be saying goodbye to the female, I bid her congratulations for standing tall and withstanding as long as she did.
A job well done, truly. And, in our last round recap, we talked about what I thought was going to be perhaps the most difficult or even the most compelling matchup of round 2, and that was against Freddy Krueger and Candyman. How did that go, Chel?
Well, again, even before the voting opened, there was buzz in the districts and in the capital about this face-off when you have someone who haunts your dreams and someone who is a living nightmare. Naturally, there's going to be some heartache, and there were quite a bit of back and forth discourse in the Discord and on Patreon talking about which side they would go for, wishing that they did not have to make this choice, but as we all know, that is the games, and we must honor those rules.
I am exceptionally proud that when we consider both of these origin stories, the people chose right, and that Freddy Krueger was bested by Candyman. Absolutely thrilling stuff.
Yes, and then on the other side of the bracket in District 3, we saw coming down to 1 vote. We again thought that we were going to have to take extenuating matters to address a tiebreaker, but we did not. The ghouls versus the Sweet 16 killer, which saw the Sweet 16 killer snagging that final blow away from the ghouls, which, considering the times, the ghouls, perhaps their origin story was a little too real for some people's liking.
Listen, if you have me in a position where I need to choose between something that feels a little bit too real in 2026 or a fun time-traveling slasher that takes us back to the 80s, I'm going to go fun time-traveling slasher every single time. So I agree with the people's choice here. Now, the numbers don't lie, but they also don't tell the whole story either. So it's time for us to really consider getting into what made this round so compelling and also so divisive. For this second round, we were challenged to look past the brute force that these tributes use on their victims and instead consider the many things that led them to this very place. We were forced to choose the winners in each matchup based on who we felt had the better origin story.
Even the most silent killers in this year's games have a story to tell. It forces us to examine if one is born evil or if evil is thrust upon someone. And in these games, it is often hard to tell the difference.
That's absolutely fair. And even Maria shared some insight because we saw this round causing a lot of heartache and hard decisions by many of our voters. The mention Maria shared and actually highlighted the abundance of details out there in conflicting canons that really create various contexts that sometimes make the actual origin story, the original origin story, really foggy and hard to discern.
Absolutely. When there is so much information out there, it is so hard to consider finding the truth, which is why you need to be very clear that you trust your sources for information. And when you're unsure about where it's coming from, perhaps go back to what you know best and who you trust most for your information.
That is wise advice indeed, sage advice in these times. And our first matchup really asked us to go back to the roots and go back to the source material. Not for who came first on film, but perhaps who came first on the page. And we saw that matchup exist with Count Orlok and Count Dracula.
Yes, and we discussed in our last recap when it was revealed what challenge they would be facing off that it could definitely cause conversations and controversy. So much so that we had to ensure that we had the experts on standby to discuss both sides of this issue. And we did dispatch to our classic horror connoisseur, Sean, who is this year's mentor for District 1, to step in and moderate the conversation. Make sure they understood the context of where both of these creatures came from so that everyone knew how to properly cast their vote in this round.
And the people really came up with the face card for Dracula and chose "I've crossed oceans of time to find you" over "I am an appetite, nothing more." They also chose suave bat form over perhaps rats and pestilence. We love to see it.
Both have their places in this universe, but unfortunately, it was decided that the original article in Dracula was going to outlast his copycat in Count Orlok, who has been sent to the shadows since and will think twice about facing off against someone that they believe they could do it better than.
And, considering storybooks and shadows, we had an interesting pairing over in District 2. We traveled and found the Babadook versus Toby from Paranormal Activity.
Absolutely. Both of them being particularly fond of their children targets, and both of them coming from their own avenues of understanding how to fill a space, how to manipulate a space to its will. It was fascinating to see, and I am on record at saying that I thought Toby would be more of a match for the Babadook, but clearly the off-season, the off time for the Babadook was very valuable to them because they have demonstrated time and again that they are not going to go down without a fight.
And Toby is just one more spirit remaining who was left Babashook by the Babadook. Now it is time to turn our attention towards round 3 and those that remain, but before we do, we really want to look back and honor the fallen and honor the tributes that did not survive round 2.
Going back to District 1 will be Count Orlok, the Invisible Man, the Phantom of the Opera, and Reagan McNeil.
Returning to District 2 are Freddy Krueger, Toby, Bagul, the Lipstick-Faced Demon.
Returning to District 3 are the female, the ghouls, the creatures, and the faculty's alien queen.
And returning home to District 4 with a heavy heart, the Hard Ice Killer, Billy from Black Christmas, the Urban Legend Killer, and Billy Chapman. And we were asked to remember, as always, that evil never dies, it just changes shape. Now, Chel, as we say farewell to our fallen tributes, I think it's time we address the other killer elephant in the room. The names we just listed are not the only tributes who will no longer have a place in this tournament, so please tell us what's happening.
Yes. Well, too often during Monster Madness, we are so wrapped up in the drama, the blood, the horror of it all, when we all need to remember once in a while that this is a game. It's supposed to be fun. So, myself and the rest of the game makers decided to sprinkle a little more fun into the mix by bringing back some fan favorites from last year's bracket, here for a second chance to earn their spot at the top.
Well, let's not waste any more time and introduce them now. The fan favorite tributes that were voted for by many in the Capitol and district citizens in our Discord chat are the Amityville House, Jennifer Check, for District 3, The Predator, and for District 4, Chucky. Welcome back to the arena. But obviously, Chel, this bracket was already packed when these fan favorites entered the room. So who's leaving? Who are we saying goodbye to make room for these all-stars?
Well, as many things do, Kris, it boiled down to simple math. We took the one tribute from each district that had accumulated the least amount of votes between the first two rounds of play and replaced them with the fan favorites. As such, we unfortunately had to say farewell to these additional tributes to make room for the new blood. From District 1, The Bride. For District 2, Candyman.
R.I.P. Tony Todd.
For District 3, the Sweet 16 Killer. And for District 4, Leatherface.
Every single one of these tributes was a formidable force in the arena, and the fact that their runs end here, before the bracket even comes and crowns its champion, it's already stirring unrest in the districts, Chel. I'm actually hearing whispers of unrest. I'm hearing whispers of accusations. People are questioning the math.
Nonsense. The only rumble I am hearing is from the excited shouts of raving fans, thrilled welcoming back Jennifer Check and the Predator. I simply can't imagine why anyone would be against welcoming these returners back into the fold. Everyone is having a wonderful time, and I challenge anyone who may say otherwise. I would give warning to anyone who decides to raid on such a delightful parade we're having.
Noted. Okay. Well, we'll be sure to keep an ear out for those joyous cheers and the good vibes only as we enter into our third round of the games, the Slaying 16. But first, we have to consider what our filter is, what our decision-making should be based on. Once again, for this round, we offered our patrons, our residents of the Capitol, the opportunity to determine what challenge our remaining tributes will face next. And round 3, our people have chosen. The category is most resilient. Consider most likely to come back from the dead.
When one no longer fears death, then they are free from the shackles of morality, replacing such worry and mortality thoughts instead with brutality and the lust for violence.
Chel, what are some of your predictions for round 2?
Well, it will certainly... We are really getting down into the meat and marrow of these brackets. Let us first look to the paranormal bracket of District 2, where we have, again, the returner Jennifer Check versus the Babadook, both of whom, in their own rights, have earned their spot in the LGBTQ iconography.
They're icons, they're legends. They're two queer horror icons that walk into the arena, but they actually got here through completely different doors, and I think that's significant. I want you to look back on this because Jennifer Check was murdered. She was stabbed in the woods by a band of men who thought they could use her body and discard her. But of course the joke was on them because the ritual misfired and she came back as a succubus, and she's been feeding ever since. Jennifer's resilience is active. It's escalation. Every wound made her more dangerous. You cannot kill a girl who already died once and decided she preferred being a predator. But when we think about the Babadook, Baba Shook, was never killed at all. And that's honestly a more scary argument. Now, there's no origin story. There's no inciting wound. There's just this presence that grows larger the harder you try to suppress it. Amelia didn't defeat the Babadook, of course. She learned to live alongside it, to feed it, to make room for it. The Babadook doesn't come back from the dead, it simply never leaves. So here's the question that your vote has to answer. Which form of resilience do you actually fear more? The girl who came back swinging, or the thing that was never gone in the first place?
And in the slasher district, we are going to. This is a matchup for the ages, Kris. We have Art the Clown versus Ghostface, which in their own rights have also demonstrated their ability to get knocked down and get back up again, so to speak.
You're never gonna keep me down. Listen, I honestly don't see how this is even a matchup. Scream 7 didn't have a great time. It made great results at the box office thanks to Neve Campbell and Kevin Williamson, but what are we really debating here? Art the Clown died at the end of Terrifier. He shot himself rather than be taken in. And then something dragged him back, something we don't know about yet. So Art the Clown's origin story is still unknown, but when you think about resilience, there's something more deliberate than any human grudge, like in Scream. Art the Clown came back wearing a face that looked less like a man and a lot more like whatever actually lives inside of him. Art didn't survive because he's tough. He survives because something worse than him decided that he was useful. And that's a very specific kind of resilience. But Ghostface has never needed a resurrection because the mask keeps switching people. The phone rings, the voice returns, Billy Loomis died and someone else picked it up. The Stuthers out there can't be denied. That person died and someone else picks up the mantle and the legacy. 7 films, multiple killers, one continuous idea, and every single one of them still points back to the same original wound that started this whole thing. You can't kill a grudge. You can only survive it until the next person inherits it. So here's the question. Do you fear the brutal undying clown or the zealots that want to continue to pick up the mantle? I'm voting clown personally.
And finally, we have in the classics district, we have a newcomer but beloved fan favorite Amityville House going up against, again, not to be messed with, Dracula, which when you think about the resiliency of the Amityville House in its many forms and sequels, I don't think this is in the bag or in the coffin as one would think against Dracula.
I just want to point out that Dracula literally died in his first movie. I just want to throw that out there. Dracula has, in legend and in myth, been alive for centuries. Yes, he was a soldier, a statesman, a scholar of dark arts before death was even on the table. Okay, sure. When he became a vampire, he didn't lose any of that. He just stopped being bound by time. He feeds and grows younger. He's wounded and comes back stronger. He was defeated in the original novel, decapitated, staked, and crumbled to dust. And he's never once stopped showing up because he is too lucrative. But there's the Amityville House, which has done almost nothing. And that is incredible to know that the fans still wanted this house in this economy back in the games. A man killed his family there in 1974 and claimed the house made him do it. The next family lasted 28 days and ran. Every family after that has reported nothing unusual. The house has been sold, renovated, given a new address to keep the tourist away. By every available measure, whatever lived in that house should be long gone. But it isn't somehow. There's 50 years of films, books, investigations, and arguments later. And the house is actually more present in horror's collective imagination than anything else in this arena. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't need to feed. It just lingers. It waits, and it lets you do the haunting yourself in your own imagination. So Dracula survives because he refuses to die. But Amityville survives because no one can agree on whether it was ever really alive in the first place. So this vote is really about which opinion you hold. We have had some incredible matchups, and Chel, I can't wait to see which one you're landing on. But for now, there you have it, folks. We completed our second round of play in the 2026 Horror Games Arena, but there is still so much more to watch unfold during these horrific games.
As we bid farewell to the many tributes who have left the games too soon or perhaps have overstayed their welcome, We look to a new day, a new dawn in the next round of play. Voting for round 3 will begin on Wednesday, March 11th at noon, and will end on Saturday, March 14th.
Farewell, and may the scares be ever in your favor.